The UFC has kept fighter bonuses at $50,000 for over 15 years. And as a result, they have gained a windfall because they are not adjusting for inflation. And of course, the UFC and Dana White want to continue to overlook this because they are winning. So for each year that passes, for each event, they are winning because they are not adjusting for inflation. And as a result, the fighters are in effect being paid less. Even though the numerical value remains the same, the money is worth less. And of course, the UFC has adjusted for inflation. We see the adjustment in the pay-per-view cost, also the ticket prices. So the UFC has definitely adjusted for inflation, but they're not adjusting for inflation when it comes to fighter bonuses. And we won't even get into fighter pay. Here, the focus is only on fighter bonuses. And fighters have brought this up before. I think I remember Tyron Woodley mentioning it, and possibly some others recently at UFC 311. Money Moicano brought this up during the pre-fight media.
You are Money Moicano. So how much is getting that bonus important to you?
To be honest, with this inflation, this bonus kind of needs to be updated. 50K is not the same as like 10 years ago, but will still be good to make some extra cash.
Exactly. The money's not the same as it was in years past. And now we're going to play a clip from, and by the way, this clip isn't directly on point with inflation, but we do have a clip of Dana White disagreeing with an increase in fighter bonuses. So I wanted to play this. It's from MMA Crazy. For context, Dana White is referring to UFC 304. So before the fights took place, the fighters were lobbying Dana to increase the fighter bonuses. He went along with it, and then a lot of fights resulted in decisions. And so a reporter asked him about increasing fighter bonuses going forward.
Every time you get on a press conference, the fighters manage to get you to up the bonuses. Do you think there's an argument that maybe you should just up them?
I think tonight showed that we should not. No.
First of all, that's a bold question because a lot of reporters never asked Dana White about increasing fighter pay or anything of the sort. So for him to first usher in the topic and then suggest that, hey, you haven't increased these bonuses for a long time. Maybe it's time for you to increase them. But Dana White immediately shut that down.
Upping them doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anybody fight any harder. It doesn't change anything. I'm not doing this again. Ever. Today was the last day that I'm doing that. Yeah. Not saying that in the future the bonuses couldn't get up, but I'm not going to be at a press conference and say 200, 300. Never again. Never again. So you can thank everybody on this card for that.
Okay, so he did say that he might increase the bonuses in the future. Nothing definitive, of course, but he did say it was possible. But what he was saying that will not happen again is he's not going to go for, we're at a press conference, everybody's cheering on increased fighter bonuses. He's not doing that again. And I just wanted to add this clip, even though it doesn't direct inflation. It is Dana White speaking to the fighter bonuses and the possibility of them going up. So now we're actually going to tab to a Wikipedia page. And I'm going to scroll down, and this is about the UFC bonuses. And here we have a historical breakdown of the bonuses that the UFC has paid out. So we have the fight of the night, performance of the night, and then the amount of the bonus, and then the fighters' names. There were other bonuses in the past, but those have changed. So it's a little bit uneven because if we go back there, I think there was a knockout of the night bonus. And so now we're down to fight of the night and performance of the night. I don't know. Maybe there is a knockout of the night. Either way, knockout of the night. So, I mean, I know at one time there was a knockout of the night. I don't know if that's still the case. But either way, let's go ahead and scroll down. We can see that the awards are $50,000. And we're just going to continue on down. These are the latest UFC events. Here we see that there were some higher bonuses at UFC 304. So that's what Dana White was referring to. We have Paddy Pimblett at $200,000 and then Tom Aspinall at $100,000. And so we're just going to continue going down. And as we go down, just think these are years that are passing by, and we still see $50,000, $50,000. So we're now at UFC 283, Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill, still $50,000. All right, so let's keep going. Let's go. Let's see. Okay, we saw $175,000, $175,000 bonus, and we see Charles Oliveira listed. So I don't know who received this bonus, but this was at UFC 262. But we continue going down. We see mostly $50,000. So we're just going to keep scrolling. So we're at UFC 224, Kelvin Gastelum versus Ronaldo Souza, and we still see $50,000. So we're just going to keep going down. Yeah, and so now we're down to UFC 187, Andre Arlovsky versus Travis Brown. We're at $50,000. We also see Chris Weidman and Daniel Cormier fighting. So they receive fight bonuses. And okay, so now we've gone down to UFC 169, and I see Abel Trujillo. I think that's how you pronounce it. We have $75,000 for fight of the night, and then $50,000 for knockout of the night. We also see there's another event, UFC 168 with Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate, $75,000. So what's interesting is if we keep scrolling down, when we get to, we're at UFC 150 now, Donald Cerrone, Melvin Gillard, I think that's how you pronounce his name, $60,000. So there's another UFC 152, $65,000, some $40,000 bonuses. But what's interesting is we actually see higher bonuses when we go further back. So we see it ranges, right? So the bonuses aren't set at one specific dollar amount. We even see $100,000 bonus. We have Edson Barbosa versus Ross Pearson and Antonio Nogueira at $100,000, and then there's even $129,000. But the point is that the bonuses were actually higher back further back. And then if we scroll all the way down to UFC 79, Vanderlei Silva versus Chuck Liddell, we can see here $50,000, and George St. Pierre received one of the bonuses. So this is UFC 79, which took place in 2007. So let's go to an inflation calculator. And I say an inflation calculator because the amount of inflation is going to depend on who is doing the calculating and what their formula is. But we'll use this one. It may be off. Inflation may actually be higher. It's usually higher than the calculators will give you. But we'll go ahead and go with one of the calculators. So I put in 2014, and then I compared it to 2024. And we have here $50,000. And so in 2014, this would have been $66,252. So that would be the equivalent. So if there was a $50,000 fight bonus in 2014, it would be the equivalent would be more than $66,000 today. But let's go ahead and enter in 2007 because we saw that fighters were getting $50,000 back in 2007. Let's go ahead and calculate. And we can see that in 2007, if we had $50,000 then, that should come out to $75,645 now. So as you can see, fighters are losing on inflation. And the UFC has been increasing their costs, but they have not been passing that along to fighters. And when you start to stack up all of the events, all of the fight nights, all of the pay-per-views, and all of the bonuses, this is a real windfall for the UFC. But it's something that gets glossed over. Of course, Dana White is never going to want to address this head on. We've seen how he is with fighter pay, but here this is merely asking to keep pace with inflation, nothing more. Again, this cannot be conflated with an increase in fighter pay because it is not that. The fighters are not in effect being paid more. They are in effect being paid the same as they once were, and really just keeping track with the fight bonuses. So this is something, obviously, I think everybody but Dana White and the UFC would like to see this, but we continually see Dana White bristle anytime fighter pay is brought up and increasing fighter pay, and they're always going against it, and it never stops. But this is something that I mean, really, just this is like a bare minimum. And it is embarrassing because there's this other side of the UFC where you have to address the fact that you are underpaying fighters and merely by the fact that you're not keeping pace with inflation. And so the fighter bonus is made to sound out like they're just giving away this money and it's $50,000 is so much. It's just not what it once was. And so I think at a minimum, we should just see this increase to $75,000 for these bonuses that are given out. So this is something that goes overlooked. The UFC is never going to bring this up on their own, right? Money Moicano brought this up, and it's something that I've also thought about. It's like, hey, inflation is happening. We need to make sure that fighter pay keeps track with this, and it shouldn't be looked at as an increase in fighter pay because that's taking the numerical value. And there's a lot of inefficiency, not just in the UFC, but other places outside of sports, where you have people who aren't paying attention to inflation and they're just looking at the raw dollar amount, but not what the value of that amount is. Money Moicano had it right. The bonuses, the UFC's bonuses, they need to increase. And just to keep pace, $75,000 looks like the right amount.